Following the revocation of the license of Heritage Bank by the Central Bank of Nigeria, some members of the minority shareholders community have called for a probe into the management and directors of the failed bank. The CBN appointed the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation as the liquidator of the Heritage Bank. Now, shareholder associations expressed the need for a probe to hold the bank managers accountable and recover people's money. They also questioned the delay in taking action and suggested alternative approaches, such as removing the management and implementing a CBN-led management to rescue the bank. While the decision to revoke the license provides some coverage for depositors, shareholders are expected to bear the consequences. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Dr. Femi Egbeshola, President, Association of Small Business Owners of Nigeria, ASBON. Thank you so much, Dr. Egbeshola, for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me, and good evening from this part of the world.
Of course, it's nice to have you around. Now, how do you think the liquidation of Heritage Bank will impact small and medium-scale businesses that, for now, have had recourse to go to banks for loans, but now have issues with accessing their monies? Do you think there will be consequences in terms of the operations and financial stability as regards what has happened to Heritage Bank?
Definitely, yes. It's going to impact negatively on the SMEs, particularly those that are depositors of the Heritage banks. At the moment, MSMEs are faced with myriads of challenges. They are on the thin line of survival, and any other impact will definitely crush quite a number of MSMEs who are negatively impacted. But those who are depositors of Heritage banks that could not access their money this time, it means that their businesses will go on a slow lane or to a total halt. And that also means that if they cannot have money to run their businesses, they are not going to be profitable. And when they're not profitable, it also means that their businesses may either become ailing or come to a dead state. And when it comes to a dead state, it goes with an avalanche of issues also. It means that they may have to begin to lay off their workers. They may have to also begin to hold their creditors. It may also have to mean that government may not also be able to generate the needed revenue from some of these small and medium businesses. So all in all, it's no good news that depositors of a bank cannot access their fund at this particular point in time.
We actually hope it will not get to the point where these businesses begin to collapse. But then we know that aside the fact that the NDIC was contracted by the Nigerian government to step into the situation, there are other alternatives that can be employed. But I'd like to find out from you, because, of course, you're an expert in things like this. Are there other financial options or support systems that can be provided either by government or financial regulatory bodies or any other institution for these small and medium-scale businesses so that they can stay afloat pending the time the issues around their funds are sorted?
Well, when it comes to the MSME sector, they are the engine of growth of the economy, and anything that impacts them negatively should be a great concern to government. Borrowing a leaf from other countries, like, for example, in the US, when Silicon Valley Bank went down, and also the same with Signature Bank in the US, what the government did was to come up and buy the liabilities of this bank, such that all the depositors, particularly those in the nano, micro, and small business sector, get 100% of their fund with the bank. It's not an issue of about getting just 5 million naira or less. The government ensure that all their funds are made available to them and on record time. So government too can support this time by giving the MSME a soft landing by buying off some of these liabilities, making sure that those depositors get 100% of their fund, particularly those in the nano, micro, and small business category, so that they can continue to do their business. And not just getting the fund this time, but getting it on record time, a week, 2 weeks, would be enough for each and every depositor of the bank to be able to get their money and continue with their daily businesses.
Okay, so if you've observed the trend for a couple of years now, discovered that most of these new generation banks, some of them have gone underground. And I was having a chat with one of my colleagues a couple of minutes ago, and it talked about when this particular Heritage Bank came into being, how it was welcomed with so much pomp and pageantry and all the paparazzi, hoping that this particular legacy would live on. But then we've seen a trend whereby these banks start strong and they begin to fizzle out and lose out at the end, to the point where they become comatose. and they just go on the ground? Is it that they outdo themselves? Does it have to do with policies of government? Are there probably measures by the CBN that is counterproductive for these banks that is making them lose their equity and eventually collapse?
I think one of the issues is that perhaps the CBN also has not ensured strict adherence to banking policies for some of these banks. For example, the cash reserve ratio should always be strictly adhered to. When the cash reserve ratio is lower than expected, it means that the bank is distressed. At that point, action needs to be taken, not at a point when the bank will no longer be saved. We also discovered that many of these banks are divesting into other areas that are not their core businesses. And this is actually telling on them. We also have quite a number of banks giving out loans unregulated. We have done some of these loans unsecured, and eventually we have some of the directors or active players or actors in the business, with the banking business, being some of the biggest debtors of the bank, which is not good for the bank. And these are some of the reasons why these banks are going down. Mismanagement also is another factor that is ravaging through the bank this time, making it impossible for the banks to be healthy. Some of these issues can be addressed by the CBN if there is the right monitoring process on many of the banks that we have in Nigeria. Yes, we have quite a number of policies that are guiding these banks, but the question is, how well are they being monitored? How well are they being evaluated from time to time? What are the procedures put in place to ensure that when they are sick, they are immediately discovered before they come to a point where they come comatose? These are some of the areas that we're begin to look at, particularly now that the banks are beginning to recapitalize. We need to begin to look at whether there are other games being played under the ground that can affect the bank at a later time. We need to be more transparent, and we need to be determined in punishing or bringing out a deterrent to those who flagrantly disobey some of these banking principles.
Dr. Femi Beshola, President Hasbon, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you too for having me.